Hi, I'm Professor Rogers, and I'm really looking forward to leading our section of American political systems this semester. Now, in class, I went over some of the nuts and bolts of what we're going to be doing within the course. But here, one thing I wanted to do is just kind of go over some strategies that past students have used in order to be successful in American political systems. And so for this, I put together a little bit of a presentation. So we're going to jump in the Zoom world a little bit, and I'm going to share my screen. And I just kind of want to go over some kind of key strategies that say students have used in the past in order to be successful within this class. And so like most classes, in order to be successful, it's going to be important in order to do the readings and the homework assignments, also to come to class or watch the recorded lectures in order to get a good grasp of the material. And then if you have some questions kind of regarding these items, whether it be the readings or something covered in lecture, never hesitate to set up an appointment with me in office hours. And so this is going to be something that's a little bit more standard across all the classes that you're taking at St. Louis University. But here, one thing I wanted to do is highlight a few things that may be a little bit more unique to what we're going to experience within American political systems. So specifically what I'm going to talk about in this video is two items on the syllabus in terms of what are going to be learning outcomes and questions to consider while reading that you can use to kind of almost create a study guide as we go along within the class. I also want to highlight kind of the importance of topic review quizzes and how they can be helpful for you on, say, the midterm and final exams. And I also want to point out some other resources that are made available to you, such as recorded lecture segments and the slides that are going to be used within this class. Okay, so let's dive in a little bit about some of these unique resources. So the first kind of set of resources I want to talk about is looking at the syllabus a little bit more. And so in this class, as I described in lecture, we kind of break things up into topics. And so then in this, we're going to have different topics, like a topic on Congress, a topic on the bureaucracy, a topic on polarization. And in here, what I have up on the screen is a topic devoted to rational choice theory. And so on this in the syllabus, in most of your classes, what you probably really kind of focus on is that the syllabus is going to list, say, the readings within the class. And the syllabus in this class does this as well. But the syllabus in this class also has two other sections within each topics. And so the two other sections are going to be this idea of learning objectives and questions to consider while reading. And then each of these can be very useful to you in order to kind of guide your studying or guide your focus within American political systems. Because, for example, when we typically think of a syllabus, a lot of times what it focuses on is the readings, and these are really important. But for each of the topics within this class, each of the sections with the readings also is going to have questions to consider while reading right below it. And then what we can see here is that, say, for example, the first reading up here is a reading by Arthur Lupia. And then there's a question kind of focused on Arthur Lupia's reading, focusing on, do voters need to be fully informed to make rational decisions? And so then in this, when you're reading this piece by Arthur Lupia, you can kind of focus your mind a little bit and be like, okay, let's look at this particular question. And so for each of the readings in this class, there should be a question to consider while reading made available on the syllabus. And so, for example, another question to consider while reading for the syllabus is, what are the two modes of information processing laid out by Popkin? And so these readings and questions to consider while reading are not random. They're meant to focus you on, say, the topics that are really important. So, for example, if I were to kind of consider what are the two modes of information processing laid out by Popkin, this may be something that we see later on the exam. And so what I have at the bottom of this slide is a little screenshot of a previous exam in which asks, what are the two modes of information processing according to Popkin? In your answer, provide a 1 to 2 sentence description of each mode. And this question is worth 6 points. And so here, this question to consider while reading, if as you're reading, maybe in your notebook, just write down, say, the answer to the question to consider while reading. And then when you're studying for the midterm or final exam later on, you can refer to your notes and then almost start your way onto a study guide. Another way to kind of start your way onto a study guide is to look at the thing at the very top of every topic in the syllabus, these learning objectives. Now, what learning objectives are roughly supposed to be are basically what will a student be able to do by the end of that topic. And so here, again, focusing on rational choice theory, we have a list of different, say, learning objectives in terms of what a student should be able to do. And one of the things for this topic is that expectation of student by the end of this topic will be able to define the concepts of a heuristic and an expected party differential. And so these are going to be topics that we're going to kind of address when we talk about, say, like again, Lupia and Anthony Downs. But here, again, these learning objectives are not random, and they can be helpful to you when you say want to build a study guide. Because once again, for example, if we kind of consider a past exam question, sometimes you may be asked to define key terms from the class. So here again is a screenshot from the exam, and that's going to ask you define or describe the following term as has been used in Puzzle 1150. And one of these terms was expected party differential. So again, as you're kind of going through the topics and going through the lectures, if maybe you kind of look at these learning objectives, and then in your notebook on the side, basically have the learning objective written out, and then the answer or an explanation to answer the learning objective. This can be really useful later on. And so here I'm just trying to highlight that the syllabus is not just this idea of having the readings down in the middle. There are other tools available to you on the syllabus in order for you to be successful in this class. There are these questions to consider while reading, which are going to be tied to the individual readings. And then there are also going to be the learning objectives, and which are going to kind of lay out more broadly what we're hoping to achieve within each topic. Okay, so this is some of the things that are available on the syllabus. We also in this class are going to have things called topic review quizzes. Now, these are typically going to be multiple choice or multiple answer questions that you will basically answer every 2 to 3 topics. And so what this is doing is kind of preparing you a little bit. Okay, let's try to study along the way and kind of identify those key concepts or key questions that are important within this class. And once again, this can be a nice little way to kind of study for the final exam or the midterm exam. So for example, here is an example of a topic review question from the topic 3. And so here we're going to be focused on Congress, and we don't have to be worried about the substance of this question right now. But in this, it's asking, under an open rule, committees are more likely to invest in researching a bill and proposing amendments to a bill than under a closed rule, true or false. So this is a question that appears on the topic review quiz. Now, later on in an example, there's going to be, in the exam, there's going to be a question maybe about under a closed rule, committees are more likely to invest in researching a bill and proposing amendments than under an open rule. Now, these questions aren't exactly the same. I'm kind of flipping some words here between open rules and closed rules, but they're really getting at this concept of like, okay, what does an open rule do in terms of basically making people research and propose amendments to a bill? And so again, here, you're gonna prepare for these quizzes throughout the semester, but they're also going to be a great way for you to kind of go back and study some of these key concepts for the midterm and final exam. So this can be another area that you can kind of use to kind of guide your studying a little bit more. And now I've kind of, put a little bit like revealed what's behind the curtain in terms of where some of these questions and how it can be useful to study. But I do want to stress that there will be different questions on the exam. I'm not going to, there's all the questions that are going to appear on the exam won't necessarily appear in the learning objectives or the question to consider while reading or in a topic review quiz. But I can say with a lot of confidence that if you can successfully lay out all the learning objectives and provide like basically demonstrate an understanding of them, answer all the questions to consider while reading, and then successfully be able to answer or know what's behind all of the questions on the topic review quizzes, you should do very well on the exams. And so here what I just want to kind of emphasize is that there is a lot of material within this class, and there are sometimes a lot of readings within this class, but I'm not trying to waste your time. I'm trying to focus your studying on what is important. Okay. And so these are some strategies in order to maybe how to build a study guide along the way within American political systems. But what if there's a learning objective or a question to consider while reading that you're just a little bit confused about, or you just need a little bit more explanation for? And so here, one thing that is available within this section of American political systems is recorded lecture segments. And so I've taught this class a number of times, and I make a best effort in order to record the lectures. And then what I've done is that I have edited these lectures from previous classes that I have taught into more digestible segments. And so each of our lectures may be like 50 minutes to an hour, but there may only be like 10 to 15 minutes of material on, say, a specific topic that you may be struggling with a little bit more. And so when you go on, say, online to Canvas and look at each learning module, what you should see is a link that looks a set of links that looks like this. And in these links is a recorded lecture segment link. And now if you click this link, it'll bring you to a screen that kind of looks at like the very top of this slide, in which what you can do is say, for example, maybe you had a little bit of confusion about the Articles of Confederation versus the US Constitution. That is fine. Scholars have been looking over these documents for like centuries and often gotten confused. And so here, instead of trying to dig through a 50-minute lecture, trying to figure out when Professor Rogers talked about it, what you can instead do is just click on the link that's focused on this topic, and then it'll bring up a Panopto video in which you'll have a previous version of, say, the class that is probably going to be very similar oftentimes to what we covered in our own class. And then you can kind of review this material on your own. Because I'm more than happy to kind of meet with you in office hours or set up an appointment. But there could be that night before the exam at 2 a.m. in which Professor Rogers may be asleep, but you want this explanation. And so you can just go online, go to Canvas, go to recorded lecture segments, and then watch these shorter videos that are going to focus on, say, the specific topics that you may be struggling with. Now, not everything from lecture will be available in recorded lecture segments, but a vast majority will. Now, in lecture itself is what's going to be kind of what's going to be dictating what we're going to be covering within class. And in here, I'm going to concede up front. So even within this presentation, I often have a number of slides. And then here it can be a little bit tricky is when you're say, I remember being a student, being like, professor is saying something, and then there's all this material on the slide. You're frantically trying to copy down while listening to professor, and it can be a little bit tough. And so one strategy that you can kind of do is that you can print out the slides before. And so I will make an honest effort in order to have the slides posted for each topic before we start that topic. And past students have kind of found it helpful in order to basically print out the slides and while taking notes. And so that way you have a kind of the resource right next to you. And then you can kind of focus in your notebook or on your laptop, kind of basically writing what the professor is saying. And so here, one thing that I do that on these slides that can be kind of helpful is that each of the slides are numbered. And so in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see a slide that is like kind of numbered. And so in this particular slide, focusing on the argument of Richard Neustadt, this is slide 16 out of, say, topic 4. And so what you can do is then in your notebook, and I did this as a student, like a different professor introduced this to me, in which it's like I would write, okay, we're on topic 4, slide 16. And then what I had to do is I just had to listen to the professor and basically write down what was important the professor was saying in order for me to understand this slide. I wasn't having to frantically copy down everything that was on the slide, afraid I was going to be missing something. And then my notes were organized because I'd be like, slide 16, we talked about this. I wrote the notes, and then there's all the material on the slide itself. And so here you're focused less within lecture in terms of being a transcriber, but instead listening and learning and being able to have the opportunity to ask questions within the lecture for clarification. And so this is kind of a way in which to make note-taking a little bit easier. All right. And so these are some of the key strategies that at least past students have found useful in order to be successful in American political systems. Again, like most of your classes, it's going to be important to read, come to class prepared, and make sure to watch the recorded lectures. And then also kind of come to me when you have a question. And so if there's, for example, you have a question, I'm happy to set up an appointment in office hours. But there are also these other resources available to you, such as the syllabus, learning outcomes. On the syllabus, also the questions to consider while reading. And then we're also doing these topic review quizzes, which will also guide you to kind of maybe different topics that are important within this class. And finally, there's recorded lecture segments and the slides, which will maybe help you a little bit more with the material. And so these are just some of the ways to be successful within American political systems. And then I encourage you, do not hesitate to outreach to me, whether by email or just talking to me after class, if you're struggling with something or there's something a little bit unclear. Because one of my highest priorities, if not my highest priorities, is that I want to make you successful within this class. And then also be sure to let me know if something is not working for you. Because if it's not working for you, it's probably not working for most other students in this class. And if that's the case, let's fix it and then set things not working. Okay, well, thank you for taking your time in order to go over this video. And I really look forward to our semester together in American political systems. Hope you're having a good day.